the meeting to order for the Clemson City Police Advisory Board for our January 23rd meeting. And we will start with the roll call. Myself, Lisa Robinson, present. Jackie Myers. Present. Kevin Dull.
Present.
Sandy Edge.
Present.
Stephen Plant.
Present.
Pablo Unda.
Present.
Elaine Masseri. Quentin Hunter. Tanaya Burns. Okay. And if we can move on to the approval of the agenda, if everyone would take a look at the agenda in front of them, see if there's anything to be changed or added. Anything? Okay. If there's none, can we get a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion.
Second, third.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Raise hand.
Aye.
No opposed. Abstentions? Okay. We can now go on to the previous minutes. If you'll take a look at those that you have in front of you, they're also posted online on the city website. It'll take a few minutes if you haven't had a chance to read through them. Do you have any edits, changes to the minutes? If there are none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Jackie, you said?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I saw you nod. Okay, great.
My apologies.
Okay, we'll now move on to citizen comments. It's 3 minutes per speaker, and we don't seem to have anyone in the gallery here. So at this time, we will move on to a presentation from the Clemson Police Department Associate VP for Public Safety, Kimberly Spears McNatt. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Sure.
My name is Kimberly Spears McNatt. So thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak with the group. Chief Campbell, thank you for the invitation. I feel like my seat should be up there too, so I'm the only one back here. But just to give you a little background, I am the new Associate Vice President for Public Safety for Clemson University. This position came available and I applied and things worked out in my favor. I've been here since September, so I was here for the start of the school year, right into football season and right into the hurricane season. So I say all that to just back up to tell you a little bit about my background and where I come from. So I grew up in Ohio. My hometown is Akron, Ohio. I'm a graduate of Ohio State University, and so that is where my career started. I have 30 years in law enforcement experience. My entire career is with Ohio State. I served as the admin lieutenant, patrol lieutenant, deputy chief, and the chief of police with 30 years of law enforcement experience. A little bit about Ohio State. The campus is over 1,700 acres. There is 10 libraries, 7 hospitals, a nuclear reactor, 2 golf courses, an airport, and a stadium at any given day that will hold over 102,000 people. There's 60,000 students and 40,000 faculty members. Ohio State is a city within a city, so you have over 100,000 people. And so I say that to just give you a little background of my experience and what I'm bringing to Clemson University. My undergraduate degree is criminology, criminal justice. I have a master's degree in human service management, and I'm also a graduate of the FBI National Academy 279. And so that's the experience that I'm bringing. As my role as the AVP for the Department of Public Safety for Clemson, that encompasses providing oversight for the police division, fire, emergency management, and Tiger One. And so I have inherited a team from Chief Mullen, Chief Whitaker, and I report to Tony Wagner, the VP for Finance and Operation for Clemson University. And of course, then he reports to President Clemens. And so trying to give you a little structure where I fall in at. And so my role really is to come pull the groups together and have a vision for the Department of Public Safety. A lot of people ask me why Clemson. Just to be transparent, Clemson Elevate, that mission, I was drawn to it. When you say that you want to provide the #1 student experience in the nation, that's a bold statement, right? And when you're talking about higher education, when you're thinking about a university, just to be fully transparent, if it wasn't for the students, we would not exist. And so that has to be a priority in making sure that they, one, are safe, and two, having a #1 experience. Being in a law enforcement and having a public safety background, we're always looking for ways to transform lives and make a difference. And that may be an interaction, customer service, interactions with any people, how you treat them matters. So that was another thing that Clemson wants to do, is transform lives for educational, and that was important to me in the community. So those were some of the things that said, why Clemson? So now that I'm here, people are like, okay, now what is she going to do? One of my visions is really those two things, focusing primarily, making sure that one, safety is important, and two, that we are providing that #1 experience. And how we do that is important, is that collaboration piece. There is not one agency can do it by itself. And so having that relationship with Clemson City, Chief Campbell's, is just a viable asset to have. In my short time here, I've had the experience of knowing that Chief Kramer, the fire chief, has developed an amazing relationship and a support that the university and Clemson has received from the city. We want to continue that relationship, because if you leave Clemson University, you're right here in Clemson City. And so understanding what impacts Clemson City also impacts the university. And so maintaining those relationships are equally important. As I look out and envision for entire DPS, for me, a leader is only as good as you left the agency. And so for me, I'm looking at how to build leaders that when it's my time, I'll only be here September, but when it's my time to move on, that I have developed leaders to be able to step up and make sure that the goals that have been put in place continue. Also, something that I'm always driven about is cross-training. Sometimes, and this may not apply to any of you, but sometimes you get people who just want to work in silos and they want to hold on to all the information and they not share it. I'm really big on cross-training, because I believe that at some point, someone else needs to have that information. And if you allow any individual to walk out the door with all that institutional knowledge and not share it, it's a detrimental to the agency. So making sure that my team across the board is cross-trained in fire, police, division, emergency management, and Tiger One, as I develop each of those groups and the leaders. Additional thing for vision for the Department of Public Safety is accreditation across the board. Currently, the police department is an accredited agency, but making sure that fire, emergency management, and Tiger One also receives those type of accreditations. So those are some of the visions and things I have planned when I think about public safety for Clemson University and our interactions of working and collaborating with the city. The university is growing, the city is growing, and so we have to be prepared for that and making sure that we have the resources to meet the needs of the community. Any questions?
Do you root
So
for
you
Ohio
went
State?
yeah, same question. Was it Ohio State or the Ohio State?
I stand corrected because it is the Ohio State University, but I didn't want to offend anyone in the room, so it is the Ohio State
I
University.
just want to know who you root for. That's what we're asking, you know.
Well, people always ask me that question, and I tell them that my team is not on the field. My team is out directing traffic. My team is making sure fires, medic calls, people are safe. And so that's the team I'm rooting for. That's the team I want to win.
Good.
That's the politically correct way.
Yeah.
We all know my alma mater,
Yeah.
that's my team, but I still root for Clemson when they're not playing them. So she'll come around.
So what opportunities or challenges do you see with the growing enrollment at the university?
So I think one of the challenges, what I'm learning in my short time here, is space. Space is a priority, right? And trying to figure out as, capital projects, double research by 2035. That's one of Clemson Elevate's goals. And so really trying to maximize where space is, and then also making sure that you attract the students that once they get here, they want to know, do they have room, right? The parents want to know, are they going to be safe? So that was really one of the challenges, even for the police department as we continue to grow, making sure that we have the space and the resources to meet the needs of the university.
So I have kind of a safety question for you. So I work on campus myself. There are a lot of scooters, other wheeled vehicles that aren't cars or carts or mopeds on the streets. Do you have any plans to issue, any kind of recommendations or things with regard to that? And just sort of the general safety concerns as they whiz past trucks and cars and weave in and out.
And so I can tell you that is a universal problem on all campuses. You ask the students, they have their earbuds in, they like being able to move around, zip around on campus. Older people like me who's driving around be like, please slow down, I don't want to hit you. And so really finding that balance where there's rules and regulations that's already in place that, for the students or anyone who's on, scooters or not riding around, there's already rules in place. You find that fine balance where if you start enforcing it, which we can, issuing citations, is that really the direction you want to go, right? And so trying to really always start with the educational piece, advising students like, hey, here's the rules of the roadway. Here's where, you can have a scooter permissible to drive. Where you can park a scooter, you don't want it blocking ADA lots, but it's really starting with that educational piece. And then when that's not being followed, and sometimes they're students, right? They're that young population and generation, then you have to move into enforcement. But for me, I always want to start with the educational piece to give them that opportunity. And they think they're invincible, right? They're young, and we all did at that age, but that's how they think. And they're not really realizing, zipping through traffic or having two people on a scooter until someone falls off and get hurt, the ramifications of it. But if you have any ideas or suggestions that I could be like, hey, this is something we haven't thought about, I'm always welcome to feedback.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Well, I have a kudos and also a question. I know, and then I also witnessed that there's you have been proactive, and now you have I don't know what to call her, but a lady from mental health that kind of rides around with your officers and responds to calls. I don't know if that's something that you initiated or not, but is there more plans to continue that or to expand that?
Yeah, so currently the PD has a mental clinician who basically responds to calls with our officers when individuals, particularly students, are in crisis, right? Just to be transparent, everyone has a different reaction when they see an officer show up in uniform. And so there has been a push, and we've followed suit to really say, okay, having an officer there, but also maybe having someone with that background to be able to help, maybe calm the person down. Safety is always first, who is in a crisis. And I think also really moving away from having a stigma related to someone who has mental health or in a crisis, understanding that is just a moment in their life. And so having someone be able to respond with their officers, they're always for safety, but also the outcomes where that person in that crisis right now feel comfortable talking to the person, willing to listen and say, hey, let me get you help, here are some of the resources, and don't see the barrier just by seeing the uniform. And so that's definitely something we plan to continue. We were able to get that via a grant, but we have seen the benefits of being able to have someone there to help our students, or even faculty or staff members at times when they may be in a crisis.
And it is my understanding that this individual is works for the Department of Mental Health.
Yes.
It's not a CUPD employee per se.
Which makes it easier, right?
Yeah.
Because that wealth of knowledge, and then that experience and resources. And so when someone is in a crisis, to have someone who can understand and maybe help them deal with the situation that they're dealing with at the time, and that's not being caught up with that stigma, realizing that's just one moment in their time, that life that they're dealing with that in that situation.
There's been an increased amount of service dogs on campus, and I know that the administration has been working to, I don't know what the proper word, but do something about it or address it. What is the current policy, and what is your vision moving forward with service dogs and ASMR dogs?
And so when you start talking about service dogs, that is an ADA, and there's only 2 questions legally that people can ask someone who has a service dog. And so they have to get that approved, saying they have a service dog with them. That's something they may need. So I am supportive of it, and I get some people maybe like, why do they need it? But that is an ADA requirement that we have to accommodate.
What about the emotional support animal?
Now that's the different one, right? So the emotional support, the university does have a policy in place that limits which type of animals can actually be considered emotional support. I want to believe right now it's limited to, I'm going to say dogs and maybe cats, and I'll have to go back and clarify that, because you don't want to open up the floodgates where everyone may have a different support, emotional support animal, but they do have policies in place to outline which animals specifically for emotional support.
Last question, has your department been trained on these policies? Do they know what the policies are? I've had issues with my dog, is actually a service dog.
So I can tell you, since my time been here, that is one of the policies that the officers have been trained on. There's a flyer that when you walk into PD that talks about service animals or whatnot, but there's always opportunity that, to refresh, to make sure that we keep putting that back in front of officers or new officers as a reminder.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I think Tony Wagner will be a great person to work with you and all that. You got a pretty good person there, I think, to work with for you, despite him being in the Navy, but that's okay. What do you think about having been here a little while now, and you looked at facilities, you looked at numbers, you looked at kind of what's going on? What is your elevate part of that, probably, that you would look to do more staff, or?
So for me, when I think about staffing, who I recruit, who I hire, who I retain, and who I promote is the most important thing that I do, especially in law enforcement, because that is the only profession at any given time that can take someone's life or take someone's freedom. So that's really important to me. I think as the university continues to grow, as it expands, we always have to look at staffing for calls for service to maintain that type of standard where if you need it, you don't want to call like, we're waiting for someone to get there. If you're in a crisis or something happening, a medical emergency, you want to be able to know that fire EMS is en route, not like you in a queue to wait to get service. And so those are one of those things that as the university continues to expand, that I have those conversations that we need to make sure that we're increasing our staff. I say that because oftentimes, and I can say this because I worked at Burger King in high school, right? When you're hiring first responders, it's not you walk in and you fill out an application. I can do that at Burger King. But when you're hiring first responders, it's usually 6 months to a year to get that person through an academy and training, then get them through a field training process where they can actually be out, if it's in fire or police, on the road by themselves. And so you don't want to just hire anyone to do that job. And so it takes time to find the right people, the good fit to serve that profession. And so not anything a slight against Burger King, because I work there, but I'm just saying you're not hiring for that same type of job.
As the campus is expanded, is there any plans for like substations or whatnot? I'm thinking of the new vet school, for example, that is not going to be more farther from the main campus, and obviously it's going to need protection, fire, MES,
I would love to continue the conversation about funding to actually, for a joint facility, substations or whatnot. Open to all ideals and conversations about how we can do that. And that's something that we have to consider as a university expands, finding the funds and resources. And maybe that's something, a joint collaboration, that we have substations, as the university continues to grow.
When is that supposed to be done? The vet school, do you know?
Well, I don't know when it's supposed to be done, but I know they started the construction of the new
Yeah,
vet
I've been
school.
by there, I've seen it, I
So,
just,
mean,
Just out of curiosity, on the service dogs, is there a criteria to proclaim that you have a service dog? I mean, you can't just bring one to campus and say it's a service dog. Well, not a service dog, the emotional support dog.
So for the service dog, I mean, the person, we can't particularly ask them to show us paperwork, but there's only two questions we really can ask is, what is the dog trained to do and what do you need it for? Basically, that's the purpose when it comes to a service dog. Legally, for ADA requirements, those are only two questions that we can ask when someone has a service animal. A lot of times, and I think I quoted it correctly, and you may know better, but those are the only two questions we legally can ask, and that's the law, what it is.
in working in HR, there's policies for service dogs and support
Emotional
animals.
support.
See, that's the problem on campus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The policies are null and void under federal law for service dogs. The law is the law, and those policies are really not valid if people wanted to push the issue.
Yeah.
Now, for the emotional support animals, it's fair game. You can push that. You can ask for whatever. You can ask for paperwork or whatever. But service dogs, no.
Well, ironically, or whatever you want to call it, I know yesterday I got the email, but they want where you're supposed to like review all these policies and tiger training or whatnot. But the bad thing, and I'm going to tell the trainees that the training has like 20 policies in there. It's like, and I'm going to have to wait for this because I don't have time to like truly, honestly review all these policies and then acknowledge.
Training for.
These policies require acknowledgement once a year. So I don't know how they do it, but I got an email.
It's a tiger training system that the university
Yeah,
runs.
with the university,
for all
and basically
the-
saying,
for, like,
it's time for you
cybersecurity
to
and
acknowledge these
ethical
policies.
treatment
You know?
and different things, yeah.
But if you do it right, you're supposed to read them, because you're acknowledging that you read them and that you understand them and whatnot. So, and it goes to all the employees, So, Sorry.
That's why I asked that question, because of those policies. They're not ADA compliant. But that's a whole nother battlefield.
well, that,
I asked it.
yeah. And I know we're gonna tangent, but with that, you need to talk to the AD. There's
Yeah,
a committee
You'll
and
be
whatnot.
here next month, right? You said March.
Yeah, but at the university, you can contact them directly.
Oh, I plan on it.
Do we have any other questions?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm the Clemson student representative. I just want to say, first to kudos. It seems like the officers have been doing more like engagement with students. I wish I knew his name to give it to you, but there's one officer in particular. In addition to being a student, I work in the library. And I notice him walk through a lot. He'll chat with students, and I mean, he knows other interns' names and everything, which is just kind of cool to see. Like, definitely helps students build more of a community, know the name behind the badge and all that. But are there plans you have for more like community engagement with the student population?
Absolutely. So prior to me getting here, that is something that Clemson has done, and I would like to see them continue to do. They are assigned to each residence hall. They have affinity groups that they're connected with, and it really is to build that relationship that we are here to make sure that we are keeping the students safe and that their first interaction is not something that's bad, that, that's good that they see that officer, that they feel like, okay, I can go approach them, I can say hi, this officer is visible, and it's not always I don't want to say a negative interaction, but when someone is probably dealing with the worst time in their life, so.
I would certainly say, for the short time you've been here, and to come by and say, hey, that's very impressive. and I think you're going to be fine and welcome to the family, and I'm sure we'll help in any way we can from that end of the stick as well.
Just for a disclaimer, I did not bring the cold weather with me tonight.
I think it's cold everywhere.
It is.
Thank you, we definitely appreciate this.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay. Ready for a staffing
All right,
review?
we can go ahead to department status, staffing review.
All right, so over the Christmas break, we haven't met for 2 months. We lost one of our tenured sergeants who found an opportunity to go elsewhere, and so we did a selection process and testing last week and this week, so we're getting ready to announce a new sergeant to fill that position. Our grant for our narcotics detective was funded, so I received notice from the state. And so we've selected the detective that's gonna backfill the detective that's gonna take that position. So that leaves us with a couple of vacancies down towards the bottom. We had 5 vacancies down at the bottom that we have to fill. However, we had one non-certified officer start 2 weeks ago. He's doing his online training. We just job offered 2 more. They'll be starting the first week and second week in February. We still have some processes in place to look for some more officers. We have one of our detention officers who's her last day in the detention academy was today. She'll be returning next week, and we still have a dispatcher position open that we're looking to fill. So as far as staffing, that's pretty much it.
How many officers do we currently have?
So we're budgeted, including the grant, for 39 officers from me down. And we have 9, we're budgeted for 9 jailer telecommunicators. So, one thing about the staff, the Department of Corrections came through and did an inspection on the jail. They found a few things that they wanted us to address. They submitted a report to the governor. Today I received a response from Captain Culbreth, who's over the jail, and we've made the changes that needed to be made. It was a new inspector that came through that we haven't worked with before. One of the problems that we have in getting direction is the manual for the type of jail that we are was last written in 1980. So there's a lot of things that don't apply anymore. So we often have to work with the inspector, and being a new inspector, you got to feel them out, what they have a passion for, what they want addressed, et cetera. So we're going well there. We did budget in the budget to fix and upgrade some things in the jail. So I know our things like our commodes are on the slate to be replaced. One of the things we're running into is finding a plumber that will do it. And some other things, upgrading the intercom, some of the cameras in there, that kind of stuff. So that's hopefully.
So will the
we'll get
inspector
done.
come back out, or?
After we submit the response to him, the things that he flagged were not equipment related as much. It was policy related. So our policy was tweaked. We are in the final stages of getting ready for our accreditation assessment. So we are waiting for the accreditation coalition to let us know when they're going to come do the assessment so that we can achieve accreditation. Also, just a few things. Right before the Christmas break, we may have talked about this here, but you may have seen it. The Atlantic group on campus thought outside of the box and looked for some test kits that they could give out to their memberships to kind of give them a little peace of mind of whether or not their drinks have been spiked. And they partnered with a company, passed a bunch of stuff out. We didn't find out about it until we learned that they were asking for permission to pass them out, and we didn't know what these kits were or anything. Did a little bit of research and learned that the kits are made by a company that basically their test kits are set up to look for fentanyl and methamphetamine, which the drink spiking is, those are not typically the substances that are put in the drink, but it could be. So I worked with the state lab in Columbia, and they looked at the research about these kits and said, yeah, that they're not as good as they're taunting them to be. And the main reason for that is the pH levels of drinks changed based on how they're mixed, and the pH level will severely affect how the test kit results. So one of the things I learned, though, in speaking with them is in Columbia, there was a nonprofit who worked with the state lab to put a blood and urine sample kit together that people who suspect that they had their drink spiked or they were drugged could voluntarily give their blood and urine samples to law enforcement to send it to the state lab to, in fact, find out. Now, you can go to a hospital and have those tests run, but the issue you run into is there's no chain of custody, and if there are foreign substances found in their system, we don't have the evidentiary solidity needed to take something to court. So these kits are that stopgap. I met with the Pan Atlantic group this past week in taking that on, advocating for the use of, and so we're still in the infancy of how we get these kits. But I purchased 10 kits over the holidays so that when the students came back, if we started getting reports, we could start having these tests done right away. One kit has been used so far, but engaging with the student group and getting the sororities and fraternities interested in putting these kits together. There's a little nominal cost of putting them together because there's an informational booklet that goes in them and those types of things. But the actual sample kit itself is the same sample kit that we use when we do DUI investigations and those kind of things, and that's provided by the state for free. So that cost isn't absorbed by the group. So we're moving forward with that. And yes, so what else? We got all of our cars back from the upfitter, so you may be seeing the new striped painted cars and their looks out there a little bit more because we have 7 more of them that are out there. And you know, as we move through the next budget years, we'll ask for replacements, and they'll all pretty much look the same at some point. And that's the department update.
So those test kits, how will those be distributed? I know you mentioned your.
So in order to use them, I've been working with the university police as well, and we're going to work with some of the other agencies, but we keep the kits. We're working with the hospital to get them training to know what the kits are and how to use them, and then we could potentially put the kits at the hospitals so that they can use them. The thing, though, is the person that law enforcement has to be involved in the investigation, has to take a report, and then has to take custody of the kit after it's collected.
Could it be at Redfern at the Student Health Center?
So I gave 2 kits to the university to give to Redfern. Redfern is agreed to do them there, but there's a jurisdictional component to it. So if there's drink spiking was suspected to occur in the city police have to come and take the kit, take the report. The likelihood, and we don't know this day and age, but the likelihood of them getting drink spiked on campus is low. So they do have a kit. They do have 2 kits available to them. They're on the list to get training, and we don't mind them having kits there, but we just need to make sure that the proper law enforcement authority responds due to that jurisdictional thing, because whoever has jurisdiction of where it occurred is the one that has to do the investigation.
That's great.
But a licensed phlebotomist or nurse or somebody has to take the collection of the kit, so that's why we're at the medical facilities.
Chief, when you said you ordered 10, is that just to get started, or will there be?
Just to get started.
What do you propose you'll need?
I don't know, so there's a couple of things to consider. The kits themselves have expiration dates on them, so we don't want to say, and I'm just going to throw numbers out there for for example. I don't want to put 100 kits together with a certain expiration date and only use 6 of them.
Sure.
Okay? At the same time, I don't want to have too few, and then when I need them, I don't have enough. So we're trying to work through what a good number would be based on how many have reported it to us. And once the word gets out that these kits are available, that may also drive how many we use, because a lot of the students are concerned about, okay, I'm already underage and I was out drinking, and now you're gonna get blood results on how drunk I was, am I gonna get charged? No, we're not gonna charge you with MIP because you're underage and you're drinking. We're gonna charge you with MIP because you're underage and you're in the bar drinking. And we catch you in the bar drinking, or we catch you go to the grocery store or convenience store buying stuff and you got a fake ID on you. That's when you're gonna get the charge. But if you're the victim of a crime and you've been drink spiked, we're not going to charge you with MIP because of that. However, in this day and age, I would not put it past somebody to claim being the victim of something like this, trying to get out of other criminal activity that they're involved in. So with that said, if we find out that's what you did, don't be surprised if you get criminally charged with the other criminal activity that you were involved in. So,
Yeah.
Any other questions for Chief? All right, we'll go on to the crime review.
yes, so you see up here on our map, it looks like we've got the measles, but that's 2 months time frame right there. In the month of November, we did 561 traffic stops and issued 272 citations. In the month of December, we did 358 traffic stops and issued 138 citations. As we all know, during the month of December is Christmas break, and there's not a lot of people coming through town during that time. So that's why we had the decrease. As far as our crime numbers, let's see. We only had one breaking and entering in December, and then 3 in November. We had 5 vehicle break-ins in December, 3 in November. We had no motor vehicles. I'm sorry, we had 2 motor vehicles stolen in December, 3 in November. Again, most of those are mopeds. We had a significant uptick in narcotics violation charges. We had 9 in November, 12 in December. And then just, public disorderly, 3 in November, 2 in December, our public drunk, 10 in November, 12 in December. And a lot of the other numbers were lower during that time period. With that said, our annual report is in its final draft stages. We'll have it for you next month, and since we don't have a speaker next month, we'll just put that on the agenda to go over.
So just one breaking and entering in December, is that lower than typical when the students are?
Well,
That's pretty good.
That's one that was reported during December. Usually when they get reported, it's in January when they come back.
Okay.
So we're not done with the month of January yet, so those numbers are not all in.
All right. If there aren't any questions for Chief, we will move on to the golf cart bill.
Yes, so if you remember, we were discussing the development of the golf cart ordinance. And during that time, we had residents that wanted to put something in ordinance that would allow them to use their golf carts at night. I then later found out that there was actually a bill filed. It didn't get past the subcommittee last legislative session. It has been refiled. You have a copy of it in front of you. What I just need to know is we did take a vote before to ask council to support the last bill, and we voted to do that, and we asked council to do that. But again, the legislative session ended and the bill didn't go anywhere. So what I need is another vote if we are going to send this version to council to ask them to support or add their support to this bill.
Has everyone had a chance to read through the bill?
Yeah, my question is the population? We're talking about the county. So are we dealing with city or county?
Well, there's two sections. It talks about a municipality. So if you look at under
Which
number
section are you looking at,
3,
Jackie?
I'm sorry, section F, number 3. Yeah. Where it's,
section.
where it's crossed off,
Uh-huh.
so they crossed that off.
So
but-
that's because that's what's in the current, that's what's
That's
in the current law.
right.
So if it's crossed out, they're taking it out
Right,
of the current law.
so they're wanting to expand the number for the population? Because I didn't
No.
see anything that was.
No, under 3, it says, under 3A, municipality may enact an ordinance allowing the operation of a golf cart at night in designated areas within the municipality, provided the golf cart is equipped with working headlights and rear lights. Or, and then it goes to a barrier island or county.
Okay, so we're just taking it out altogether?
Yeah, because the current law allows a county with a certain population to allow for this to occur under the current law.
So we're taking that restriction out, and it doesn't matter how big or small the.
Yeah, they struck that part and then they added all counties. So you look after the part that was
Gotcha, I
struck.
saw that, that's why I was asking
It's all
about.
counties, so now
I didn't see
basically,
a number, is there a number, what are we looking?
It looks
Okay.
like they have removed the number.
All right, yeah, okay.
So all counties.
Do you anticipate an issue going forward with the growing population?
Well, my concerns are, and this is something that we could address in city ordinance, because this state law, once it changes, then we have to have a city ordinance that will allow for it. And I think we can address this in our city ordinance, but currently, under state law, if you have a low-speed vehicle in LSV, which looks very much like a golf cart, but it's a low-speed vehicle, it already has the lights, it has all the safety equipment, it has seat belts, it has mirrors, it has all those things. Part of the reason why I think this is being passed is an LSV is a little more expensive than a golf cart. And if it's an LSV, it has to be licensed through the DMV. And if it's licensed through the DMV, you have to pay property tax on an LSV, just like you do your vehicle. So because of that, they want the golf cart to be allowed, so they don't have to pay property tax, they don't have to register it, all they need is the permit, and then they can do it at night if the city or the county allows for it. With that being said, the lighting standards that are on LSVs and on vehicles are set by federal law. They have to illuminate so far in the front, so far in the back, they have to be able to see so far in the front, so far in the back. This particular version does not put those federal standards on these lights. So I think we could address it in the city ordinance if we want to put those federal standards on there. But that is my concern, is I hope communities, when they take this into consideration, they're thinking about, or their attention is brought to them, that all of those federal standards are under federal law, are adopted under state law for vehicles. This is not considered a vehicle, and so the way it's written, it doesn't enact that federal law into it. So that would be my concern. Can we see them so that they don't get hit?
Good point. That's all I have to say.
So we need to vote on whether the board wants the council to be in favor of the bill, but we're not yet looking at any of the draft language on the ordinance. That's not relevant yet.
No, I've got the ordinance on the agenda also, just to bring it to everybody's attention again, because we are going to start that up again. If you remember, we were waiting on the university. The university was supposed to come out with a new policy. I still have not heard from the university. I've met with them. I was told they had some discussions, but they weren't really gonna pick this up until after football season. Well, football season's over with, and if we continue to wait on the university, it's just not gonna happen. So the next thing here is, I want everybody to have a chance to reread, re-review the draft ordinance that we have on, see if there's any tweaks we wanna make to it before sending it to, the council for consideration.
Okay, well, let's first address the bill, the issue of the bill. Are there any other questions regarding this? Can we get a motion on whether we want to refer this to council to ask for them to be in favor of it?
So to be sure, as it stands, we have to wait for this to pass before we can address any of the concerns that you have, because they're very valid.
Yes, so we can still enact a city ordinance, because if you read the city ordinance, basically it puts some provisions of when you're driving a golf cart, when you're legally allowed to do so under state law, which now is during the day, before sunset, all that kind of stuff, and you have to permit it, and you would only be allowed to use a golf cart that's permitted in the city. If not, you could be ticketed. So that is what our current ordinance is now saying. If they pass the state law, it gives the municipality the right to allow golf carts to drive at night. We then can come back with a recommendation to amend the ordinance that was passed, if we pass it before, to add those provisions into the ordinance.
Thank you.
Okay, can we get a motion? Oh, yeah. Sandy?
Motion that we, I guess, support it at this point, or whatever the case may be. I think in the long run, it certainly will help safety. We want to help that's the case. But having been around Myrtle Beach a few times down there, you know, people are going to have golf carts one way or the other probably. Anyway, I support.
So the motion is to refer to council that we are in support of this and asking them to support this as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. All those in favor, show of hands. Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, that passes. So we will go on to the ordinance. If you haven't had a chance to read through all of it yet, go ahead and do so. And then if we have any questions,
I'll just keep it on the agenda for next month.
Yeah.
So give everybody a month to look it over. If you have
that
questions,
sounds good. And we can come
contact
back
me.
and talk about
And
it.
if you want to make any tweaks to it in March, then we can do it then.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. Okay, so we will move on to requested presentations. I know, I think service dogs for vets are coming in March,
They're in March.
right? Do we have any other suggestions of speakers that would like to come before the board here?
Who do we have coming in March?
Yeah, service dogs for vets.
Oh, yeah. I have several friends who want to come to that possibility.
Well, if you think of any others, we can certainly try to get folks scheduled.
What would be like suggestions for speakers for this body?
So, anything dealing with public safety or citizen outreach, things that we want to make sure that we're aware of, maybe that, others attending meetings. Well, we don't have anyone in the gallery today, but who might
Well,
be
it would also be
interested.
too, if there's a policy or procedure that we do at the police department that you want a presentation on how we handle, it doesn't have to be an external speaker, it could be an internal speaker, but
Yeah, 'cause
I need to know the topic so I know who
We've
to
had
task.
detectives speak before.
Yeah, we had a detective talk about gangs
narcotics and,
and narcotics, so, those types of things. I know one thing that, and I'm just gonna throw it out there, but, the city council has been toiling with updating the FOIA, policy for the city. And FOIA heavily is, involved in the police department because we get FOIA requests all the time. But we also have discovery requests, which is different than FOIA, and people get the two mixed up all the time. So, I mean, that's potentially a presentation that could be brought to, you know, what are the requirements under FOIA? How does it apply to the police department? And what are we supposed to supply and not supply, those type of things. I give you a quick example. Somebody came in, did a FOIA request wanting a copy of a police report in which they were arrested. Even though they were arrested and they're the subject of it, a FOIA request is not what they want.
They want discovery.
They want discovery, because in a FOIA request, there are rules where I cannot release personal identification information. It's an active, ongoing criminal investigation because they are under charges. It has not gone to court yet. So there's other evidence that I cannot give them under a FOIA request. They have to do a discovery request. So either they do the discovery request or their attorney does the discovery request, and then any materials that would be used against them in court would be handed over to them. So it's just, you know, little nuances like that. And somebody said, well, I'll do a FOIA request to get the body camera. Well, body camera is not releasable under FOIA, but it is under discovery. So it's those types of things.
I think it'd be great, you know, to talk about that letter. I read it. I got it in an email from the mayor. I assume everybody got one, but I'd be very glad to talk more about that. It's a good idea, but I think that young man over there has been.
Would it be possible to hear from the new narcotics detective? Or unless I guess he's still will still be getting settled in.
I can ask him to, let me ask him and see if he's, because he's involved in different operations. And although he's not a undercover person, he's still probably not something he wants to parade around publicly.
Yeah.
So let me ask him and see how comfortable he is about that. And if so, you know, he could give you examples of a lot of the cases that he's involved in and what we see here in Clemson.
I'd like to hear from the K-9 unit personally.
We don't have a K-9 unit.
I thought you did.
We used to, we don't anymore.
What?
No, the dog's upset about it.
Yeah.
He said, I'll do it.
We don't, now with that said, we use K-9 units from other agencies, and I can ask one of them if they would be willing to come and talk, because we do use them. Now K-9s
Is that
are
something you're
very,
considering? I mean, it's very costly.
they're very costly and they're very staff intensive, because you have to do a minimum of 8 hours of training a month per discipline that the K-9 is trained to do. So if it's a tracking, narcotics, article search K-9, that's 24 hours of training a month that team has to do to keep that certification. And so, you know, out of 160 hours, 24 hours is already out the window. So it's a staffing issue, it's a cost issue. Probably better for larger departments to have, because they can sustain that more so than a smaller agency like us. Now, when we didn't have staffing woes like we do today, they had a K-9 unit and they had people that were dedicated to do that, and it was still a burden, but they weren't running with 3 and 4 officers down.
What's the next closest department that has K-9 unit?
The sheriff's office has a K-9 unit, the university police has a K-9 unit, but they are bomb dogs, that's all they do. Oconee County has a K-9 unit, Anderson County has a K-9 unit. As a matter of fact, we called on them when we had the burglaries in Crestwood, and we thought we still had the person in the neighborhood, which we did. We found out later that she was hiding in the woods, and she thought for sure she was going to get bit, and the dog went right past her. So I guess she was very well camouflaged.
Wow.
It shouldn't have mattered.
Right.
Anyways.
Do you have anything for open discussion, anything else? Yeah.
One of the things I noticed with the annual report is the domain for the city police website is a .org. I know that .gov is provided free. Has it ever been looked at to convert? to a dog of?
I will ask my IT director, because he's the one that set it up. So I don't know the answer to that question.
Interesting.
All right. If there's nothing further, can we get a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right.